And now back to Just Energy Radio with Dr. Rita Louise.
Hello and welcome back to the second hour of Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for staying tuned to the second hour of the show. This hour we're going to be speaking with Eldon Taylor about free will. Has information overload caused the destruction of a free and open society? This hour of Just Energy Radio is brought to you by the Institute of Applied Energetics. That's www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com, where you can jumpstart your intuition today by downloading their free 50-page guide. And if you haven't heard, my book, Dark Angels, An Insider's Guide to Ghosts, Spirits, and Attached Entities, is on sale this month. The Kindle version is available on Amazon.com, $2.99, all through the month of October, just in time for you to scare yourself and your friends for Halloween. That's Dark Angels, An Insider's Guide to Ghosts, Spirits, and Attached Entities. Let me tell you a little bit about this hour's guest, Eldon Taylor. He's been on the show before. We always have great conversations, but here's a little bit about him. Eldon Taylor is an award-winning New York Times best-selling author with over 300 books and audio-video programs. 300. And is the host of the popular syndicated radio show Provocative Enlightenment. His most recent works include Gotcha, The Subordination of Free Will, Choices and Illusions, I Believe, Mind Programming, What Does That Mean?, What If, and Self-Hypnosis and Subliminal Technology. His webpage is eldontaylor.com, and today we're going to be talking about his brand new book, Gotcha, The Subordination of Free Will. So please welcome Eldon Taylor. Hey, Eldon, how are you?
I'm excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity to join you, Rita, and to share with your audience today.
Well, I think your book is not only timely, I think the information that is in it, everyone needs to read. I feel like what it does is show us how blinded we are to what's going on around us. And we're going to get into it, but why did you decide to write this book?
You know, the interesting thing there is I was actually asked to write the book, asked to see how far some of the scientific marketing, if you will, I'll put that word in quotation marks, some of the propaganda techniques that had been started by Edward Bernays, the nephew of Sigmund Freud, who decided, hey, what we ought to be doing is, looking at what my uncle says causes people to do what they do, and utilizing it to get them to do what we want them to do without them knowing that we're the one that's actually manipulating them to doing that. Get them to do what we want them to do because they think that's what they want to do. Well, when I started into the book, there came a point in the research, and the research took a little over 4 years, where I basically stopped and I thought about it. And, my problem was twofold. The first was I was getting weighted down. I mean, some of the material is just nasty. It's dark. It's not at all like what I like to put my head into or what I like to write about. Much of it is just as absent of inspiration as you can possibly imagine it being. And the other was, am I doing any service by sharing this information? I mean, if it doesn't do a service, why bother with it? And it was at that point, Rita, that I think I had this nudging, this continual urging, this, I suppose you might even say soul agreement, understanding that I was supposed to do this. I was supposed to put this out. I was supposed to inform people. And it came through to me like this. How awake spiritually or in any other way can we really say we are when we're inauthentic, when we are the product of what we have been trained to be, what we have been managed to conform to be. When we're being continually manipulated, continually persuaded, and we're unaware of that, how can we say that we're spiritually aware or that we're awake in any real sense of the word? So, you and I have had conversations before. You know that a lot of my research has been in the area of why people do what they do. And I was very, very aware that the new data shows us that if we take an individual and we place them in functional magnetic resonance imaging and give them choices to make, an MRI technician is going to know what they decide 6 to 10 seconds before they know what they're going to decide. In other words, all of these decisions are being made out of consciousness. They're being made in a subconscious, if you will. They're being made, and then the conscious mind is rationalizing why those decisions were made. Well, understanding that, and then putting the other side of the equation together, where so much of our behavior is just the product of how we've been imprinted, how we've been educated, and how we are being manipulated on a 24/7 basis, it became important to me to share it.
And so we're not talking about subliminal advertising, which we have talked about in the past. We're talking about something bigger and deeper and actually maybe more personal on a lot of levels.
Very, very much so. I mean, to me, I thought about titling the book Nudges, but we can, and I'll explain that in a minute. But the reason I decided on gotcha is because, to me, the very first big gotcha is to hide the fact from us, to enculturate us in such a way that fosters the interest of society as a whole or of an elite few, while organizing the rest of us to conform and thereby consume. So the first gotcha is to hide ourselves from us. I mean, the journey of life is really about living into our authentic selves. And if that's hidden from us, then that's your first gotcha. And that's exactly what most of us do. Most of us, for all intent and purposes, we've been educated in a 3-tier educational system that was copied from a Prussian mandatory education system of 1812. Now, that Prussian system was created in 3 tiers specifically for reasons Bernays later articulates in his book at the time of, Edward Bernays' book Propaganda is now 70 years old, 60 years old. It doesn't go back to 1812, but as Bernays puts it in his material, it's the responsibility of the elite to organize the masses in such a way that they form a coherent society. And to do that, you must manipulate them, withhold the truth, share with them only that which guides them like you would herd cattle. Well, this 3-tier education system is designed such that the top tier is for the elite. So most people don't know this, but in the last 7 elections of 14 candidates, 12 of them came from our Ivy League schools. The second tier is designed to educate the people that will serve the elite. There'll be the doctors and the lawyers. And the last tier, the one that treats almost everyone, is designed to teach us to conform. It's not about educating, and that's a fact. That's the unimpeachable. Thorndike, Webster, all of them concur, including Chomsky today, Noam Chomsky. That system, our mandatory compulsory education system, is there to socialize, not to educate. So you don't learn to think. Instead, you learn rote core memory work. You don't learn values or ethics. K through 12, there's no such thing as ethics classes, philosophy classes. That's not something that's taught to you. Instead, you're socialized. So think of it this way. You get little Johnny, little Mary, get them all ready for kindergarten. You buy their pencils and their erasers and dress them all up, and they're all excited, and they walk into the classroom, and the very first thing the teacher does is tell them to put all their pencils and all their erasers in this big basket, and that way there will be plenty for everybody. We'll just sort of share and share alike. Now, that's socializing. And what is the message? We can say it's a subliminal message, but what is that message? That message is moving us away from the nature of ownership, from the nature of private property, from the nature of separating ourselves. It continues. I mean, everybody gets awards. We don't treat good, better, and best. Competition is bad. And the socialization not only continues at that level, children are taught to take it back home and educate their parents, who themselves had been imprinted earlier in another process, in the same process, but at an earlier state. So what we find is that as we move through this educational system, as we move through our maturation and culturation process, what happens is, as the duckling raised with the chickens behaves like a chicken, we have been so imprinted that we behave in certain ways that are very predictable, and that makes it easy to manipulate and control us. We get into our adult world, and we may know better than to just spend our lifetimes consuming. In fact, I remember a lecture that I enjoyed years ago from Professor Carl Lepreche. In the lecture, he spoke of the 4 human drives, what he referred to as the 4 Fs: fight, flight, feeding, and the F word. Now the students he was addressing were members of law enforcement. So, using the F word in place of fornicating would get a big laugh, and it did from all of them. I've never forgotten the 4 Fs in this context, but because at the time I was working on a paper having to do with why there was so much interest in getting more, more money, more power, more property, more things, more shopping, more, I considered the more to be a more modern human adaptation, or if you will, a fifth force that formed yet another human drive. So when I look into the real world today, I see that that's exactly how we're behaving. Now, I said earlier, I could have called this book Nudges. And the reason I might have done that, Rita, is when you read the book, you'll see that everything is documented very heavily. I know you've looked at it. And that's just because I don't want to put an opinion out there. I just want to put out facts. I want you to be aware of those facts. And so, listen, if it was a CIA document, here's that CIA document. And you happen to have a Kindle version or an EPUB version, you'd be able to click right on it, and it'll open right up to that CIA document or the web page or whatever it is, so that you can see that the data that's presented is all factual information. You can put your own pattern together, if you will, because I do see a much bigger pattern that emerges from this. But part of my process in the research led me to some material that was published in 1950. And there was a meeting in California in 1950 of a group of people interested in changing the complexion of America. And I'll save a great long story. You can read all about it in Gotcha. But this is what they did. They set out an agenda. The agenda was, there are certain things we need to do in order to change the nature of America. We need to move people away from this strong sense of self-reliance, from this sense of self-dependence, independence, if you will. We need to break down the nuclear family. We need to change the moral codes of the folks. And so what they did is they set this out. Now, break down the nuclear family.
Crazy.
I know it's crazy, but when you look at it, see, break down the nuclear family. Were they successful? 1950. How did they go about doing that? Well, if you remember, the 60s and the 70s were all about pop psychologists telling us it was better to separate two people to, divorce than to try and raise children when they weren't getting along, when it wasn't a harmonious family. Divorce rates just skyrocketed through the 60s, 70s to today's rates. 4 in 5 marriages simply don't make it. So I think I said that incorrect. I think it's 4 in 10 first marriages don't make it. And then the numbers go up for second, third marriages and so forth. But the nuclear family, when I was a boy in my neighborhood, everyone watched me. I mean, I swear all the neighbor women were spies. If I did anything, they had my mother on the phone. Today, you look at your neighborhoods and people don't even know each other. Mm-hmm. There is no such thing as this collective neighborhood. The strength of the family, the strength of the neighborhood, the strength of the community has completely changed. It's nowhere near what it was. Debt. Debt was one of their targets. How do you get people? How do you learn to own people? How do you get people to allow you to do things that they wouldn't otherwise do? I had a mentor once tell me, Eldon, if I come to your door and I tell you I'm going to take your home because I just like it, I like its location, get out, you're going to resist. But if I come to your home with a piece of paper and I tell you, you just didn't make your payments, dude, I'm going to have to repo your home, you drop your head in shame and walk away. Debt. In the 50s, there wasn't debt. For all intent and purpose, you might have borrowed money on a farm or something, but you didn't finance cars, you didn't finance vacuum cleaners, and so forth. Then we had the 10% down, and then no money down, and now here's the unlimited credit, and then there was the housing boom. And how many people did walk away from their homes? What we see is this tremendous redistribution of wealth that has taken place in the last 70 years, since the 50s, when all this agenda was laid out. And today we have some 80 families that control 95% of the world's wealth. Morality. They very specifically targeted morality. George Orwell in 1984 had sexuality destroyed. So that was one of the control mechanisms. Well, he got that part wrong. Sexuality has been heightened since the 50s, and the morality that accompanied it has completely changed. And in some instances, maybe it should have changed. I mean, the diagnostic manuals had homosexuality as a disease in the 50s. So maybe there have been good ways that it has changed, but the whole culture of morality has completely changed. So you pick up, media. We're all also influenced by media. And you watch something, Grey's Anatomy, How I Met Your Mother, and these shows are basically about serial polygamy, from one relationship to the next relationship, in one bed to the next bed, and we have an entirely different culture. What happens when you do that? Well, America was built largely on this Christian ethic, this Judeo-Christian tradition. That's where our values come from. As I said earlier, we're not taught values in school. So what happens when you begin to destroy the values is you completely erode the nature of religion, the nature of any form of organized spirituality, if you will. And in that process, you end up with what? Cultural relativity. Now, that's where we come today. So there are some new age gurus out there that are saying things like, well, you can't say that's wrong because they're from that culture and that's, what they think is the right thing to do. I had a conversation with Neil Donald Walsh, and we were talking about atrocities that take place in countries like Pakistan directed at females, such as the 14-year-old girl whose nose and ears were cut off and was discarded to the stable by her husband, who had traded for her, but she failed to please him, and that was her punishment. Or the two women, that young girls, one 15, one 23, sentenced to be raped and then paraded naked in public with their faces painted black because their brother had run away with a married woman. When you see these sort of things take place, in my mind, they're unconscionable. They're wrong, and as wrong can be. But in some minds, like Neil Donald Walsh, no, it's not wrong, because that's the culture, and the bad guys, well, the bad guys, they were, they made deals on the other side to come down here and be the bad guys. And so maybe I'm all wet, Rita, but in my view, when you look into the world, there should be a right and there should be a wrong. And when we recognize an atrocity, it's always because somebody has been deprived of their human dignity without cause or provocation. That to me should, is an obvious standard. But let's assume I'm wrong. And my value system.
Let me just interject. When we start looking at cultures, and one of my things is looking at ancient and indigenous cultures, we find a very similar set of values around the world that we find in the Judeo-Christian tradition. They have different names, but this core set of morality is consistent around the world. And where we've deviated from this core morality seems like it's the root of so many of our problems.
I agree. I totally agree. And so that's what I was going to say. Whether you agree with what I'm trying to say by way of my own personal sense of morality or not, the fact is the morality has been changed. And this is, again, one of the items in their agenda. There are 12 items in the agenda. Every single one of them have come to place. They have all happened. And that's why I say I could have called this book Nudges. And when I see that, I begin to see a pattern. And the pattern suggests to me, wait a minute, I need to pay some attention here. Especially since I'm also so aware of just how many of us are making decisions and we have no idea why we're really making it. The research shows us, Rita, that if I were to, I take a group of men and I get 4 automobiles and new automobiles, and I drape a model in a bikini over one of those automobiles, and I ask the men, which is the fastest? The data shows us clearly they're going to tell me the automobile with the bikini-clad model draped over it. Now, when I bring them back a week later with 4 more automobiles, same 4, but they're different colors, I mix them up, but I put the model on a different automobile, they'll again identify the fastest automobile as the one with a model. And when I point out to them that what they've done is conflate the model with the speed of the car, they'll deny it. And they'll rationalize how and why they came to that conscious decision. Things of this nature are known as primes. Billions, perhaps trillions at this point in time, have been spent by everyone interested in selling you a product or plank in a political platform in understanding how to plumb your subconscious, how to motivate you, how to get you to do what they want you to do. Uh, you know, I could bring the most liberal person in the world into my office and set him down at a desk and give them a survey. Say a survey designed to determine conservative or liberal scale. How conservative, how liberal. Okay? Bring them back an hour later. Sit them back down at the table. Questions the same, said differently, disguised a little, but basically the same. But this time, I have a photograph of children, or I have a jar of hand sanitizer on the same desk. I will skew their answers from liberal to conservative by the pure presence of that jar of hand sanitizer.
No way.
Why?
No way.
Because what is hand sanitizer? Hand sanitizer, germs, watch out, be careful. Dangers, disease, be clean, be careful. You see, that's all conservative kinds of attitude, and that's what skews you. But when I point out to you that your answers are changed in just that 1 hour, you will defend why they have changed, despite the fact you were manipulated into it. And once you've defended it, you will become that. You become, you must, one of our compliance principles is consistency. We have the need to be consistent. If I come to your house and I say, Rita, I've got this great cause here. We're taking care of these children. And I wonder if you would just be supportive of it and put this little placard in your window or this decal on your automobile. If you agree to that, because of your need to be consistent, you are 10 times more likely to agree to let me put a large sign in your yard than you would be if I came to you initially and said, can I put this large sign in your yard supporting this cause? We absolutely get managed in that same way. We just get kind of moved along. And, one of the things that really gets to me, or that I find interesting, is the number of people. Well, let me digress. We're aware today that it wasn't a conspiracy theory and that our NSA folks and FBI folks perjured themselves to Congress when they claimed that they did not spy on Americans. They did not keep records of phones. They didn't have these, large data bank of all these calls, etc. Whatever you think of Snowden, he came along, blew the whistle, and now we know that that's an entirely different matter. But, I talk to people about these things, the manipulations and so forth, and they say, so what? So what? It doesn't matter. I haven't got anything to hide, Hey, who cares? Let me share something with you that you'll find in Gotcha, and a part of it is a quote from the book by Max Berry, Lexicon, but it's a very tutorial piece. The key to the web is it's interactive. That's the difference. Online, someone visits your site. You can have a little poll there. It says, hey, what do you think about the tax cuts? And people click and segment themselves. First advantage right there. You're not proselytizing, speaking into the void. You're getting data back. But here's the really clever part. Your site isn't static. It's dynamically generated. This means the site looks different to different people. Let's say you chose the poll option that said you're in favor of tax cuts. Well, there's a cookie on your machine now. And when you look at the site again, the articles are all about how the government is wasting your money. The site is dynamically selecting content based on what you want to hear or what might piss you off, what will engage your attention and reinforce your beliefs and make you trust the site. And if you said you were against tax cuts, we'll show you the stories of Republicans blocking social programs or whatever. It works every which way. Your site is made. Your sight is made of mirrors, reflecting everyone's thoughts back at them. And we haven't even started talking about keywords. This is just the beginning.
But
Third
that's really
major.
scary. I mean, it creeps me out. I have to tell you, it creeps me out enough that I'll go on like Facebook, but I had just been on Amazon or eBay. Like we sell stuff on eBay, and so I'll go on to Facebook and it'll have this little ad for the thing I just looked up, which is like my product, asking me if I want to buy it. And I'm like, wait a minute, I was just there. And I'm like, I don't like them in my pants. And it feels like more and more they're in your business.
They are keeping records of everything about you. You have a smartphone, don't you, Rita?
Yeah, it's not so smart, but yeah.
Okay. And you have a flashlight utility on it. Is that true?
I don't think I have the bad one, but I do have a flashlight utility on it. Yes,
okay, well, you'd better check, because the 10 most popular flashlight utilities, the free ones, all track you. They track everything about you. And when the federal government investigated this because of complaints, the company said, well, that's why we give it away. So they said, well, okay, you have to tell people that. You have to inform them. So they said, fine. They put them in 40-page documents that nobody reads. We all just click agree, and it installs on your phone. If your phone is taking anything more than 5, 6 megs to handle that flashlight, you got a Trojan on there. You are, everything that you do with your telephone is being recorded and tracked by an independent party, and then will be sold. So look, we see, maybe my wife is a case in point. Let me use that because she's with you. She totally hates the fact she can search something and then here it comes back all the product. But she gets on Facebook and she's an animal rights activist. She is convinced that there is a Armageddon being carried out against animals. And so she posts everything that it shows some of the most abhorrent actions of slaughter yards and farming methods and cruel treatment of animals. And because she does that, she sees that the Facebook posts that are right at the top of the page every time she looks are of other people posting the same thing. Now, Facebook doesn't show you everything. Facebook works like what I was just telling you. They feed you back what you want to see, what you want to hear. Well, what's the harm in that? Look, the data is being collected. So, who sells sick animals? I'll tell you who. Those charities that are after money in order to protect animals, their animal rights causes, and so on and so forth, they're buying the list and they're mailing you information. We've all received those political lists. In comes the survey, and the survey asks us, do we want X to continue? And of course we say no. They already know we don't want that. Well, would we prefer this? Well, of course, yes, we would. They already know that. So we fill out this survey answering the questions that they already have the answers to. And when we get to the bottom of the survey, it says, if you want to protect this, it's time to donate. We need your money in order to protect your issues. And that's used, these techniques are used as much by charity and political programs as they are by the Fortune 500 companies that are there to sell you anything from batteries to gasoline. The bottom line is, because this is all interactive, and because we're creatures who want to hear what we want to hear, and here's another bad part about that. Let me see if I can express this. A while back, doing my research, I had 2 networks on the same day, the same morning. One was a conservative network, the other a very liberal network. They were conducting the same survey. However, it was framed very differently. On one, the conservative, we had the question phrased like this: Should poor taxpayers be forced to work 2 jobs in order to put their children through private schools, since our public schools are failing so badly? Well, of course, the public schools, everybody knows that our public school system is not ranked very well in the world against all other nations, to say the least. On the other network, the survey was put this way: should poor taxpayers be forced to pay for rich kids to go to private school? Now, it's the same survey. They're asking about school vouchers, but look at how they're framed. I mean, if I'm liberal and I hear, should poor taxpayers be forced to pay for rich kids? Of course not. Are you kidding me? That, you know, and if I happen to be conservative and I hear, well, no, poor taxpayers shouldn't be forced to work 2 jobs. What I'm not going to do is maybe go to the library or do some internet search to determine what's a school voucher, where does the money come from, who uses it, how does it impact public education, where is it used in the world, etc., and so forth. In other words, I don't do the research. What I do is tune in to what I want to hear. And then I walk away with that soundbite, and it's what I reason from. It's what I share at the water fountain. It's the premise on which I vote. And I have no clue what the real issue is. And that is a big gotcha.
But that is so rare, especially with things like Facebook and this internet stuff, where you hear a soundbite. So then you go, because I research, because I'm not going to believe something unless I feel like it's true. And
right.
You start to do some research and you type in whatever the phrase is, and you find 50 sites, and then you start looking, and it's like the same article over and over except rearranged, but basically the same information, and it's like, isn't there anybody that has a different opinion, or is it just the same writer posting it on all these sites? That one's kind of hard to tell, but I find that part really interesting.
You know, a lot of people, I mean, the very foundation to a civil society is a government you can trust. If you can't trust your government, things get just a little precarious from time to time. So most people are not aware that we actually have an agency of the government that exists solely to manage the media. And at one time, they laid claim to the fact that they could put a soundbite out, and it was like pushing the Wurlitzer Jukebox. It played everybody, everywhere. You remember the Wurlitzer Jukeboxes? You'd go into a restaurant, okay, all right. Well, listen, one of the things that I like to do in my live presentations is show exactly what you just discussed. I have a 7-minute segment where from coast to coast, we have different anchors, different news shows, different networks, all saying the same thing. But they're not just saying the same thing. Like, you know, what you're explaining here, they're acting it out as though it's original with them. You know, the expressions with their hands and their interactions with their colleagues, it becomes humorous and then frightening. Over and over and over and over, exactly the same sound bites. It's that Wurlitzer Jukebox. Listen, sometimes that is to rouse the nation. Video news releases, VNRs, they're not supposed to be played in America. This is information. These are videos that are created to be shown abroad, to be shown in countries like Iran, to win the hearts and minds of the nation. But they're shown very often here. Indeed, during the Bush administration, we had a lot of them shown here in America. We can be lied to in these sound bites. I think back to the call for Iraq War won as a result of the Kuwait invasion, and first President Bush telling everyone about the story that was shared of the young woman who had seen Iraqi Republican guards pulling babies out of incubators and stabbing them with bayonets. That was precisely the same thing that was said, that was spread throughout the world, one soundbite on all networks, rallying us towards the Second World War and our involvement against Germany, because it was the Germans who were bayoneting babies then. That was a lie, and the story told by President Bush was also a lie. That's a fact. Everybody knows that now. But it was heard everywhere. Now, here's something else that you should know. When a main story runs, a piece of slander comes out, or a story like the Republican Guard bayoneting babies, everybody hears that. When the retraction comes, it's always buried, and very few people hear it. But even the people that hear it continue to place emphasis on the lie. They know better, but they still place emphasis on the lie.
Eldon, let me ask you then, how do you start to separate out what is true and what is something else? It seems like that something else is so buried that it's challenging to even try to access it.
You know, the answer to that, I guess, depends upon what you're trying to separate. If you're attempting to separate out world news and issues, I think what you have to do is you have to get outside the country, and you have to look at some of these presses that are considered to be peripheral or suspect. You know, I had this wonderful conversation with Dr. Jay Richards not long ago about race, and we were talking about how you break down the racial problem, the identification of tribes. And the best way we concurred to do that was infiltrate. You know, you get out of your own group and go mix with another group. As long as you stay within whatever pattern, whatever your comfort zone is, that zone owns you. You know, the bottom line is, if you get your news every day from the same sources, you can count that those sources know who you are, and they are telling you what you want to hear, and you are trusting them more and more, and they therefore own you, period. Okay? If you look around, if you compare stories, let me take one here. We're in a political year. We've got all these debates going on and campaigns, and you know, there's this Republican spoiler by the name of Trump. When you listen to what a CNN or an MSNBC has to say about Trump, it can be very colorful, but it's not really derogatory. But when you listen to Fox, you hear very derogatory remarks about Trump. Now, why would a conservative network like Fox, who supports many Republicans, be after Trump? Well, when you start asking yourself questions like that, sometimes the answers can become obvious. But by contrasting all of the stories that are out there, you gain the opportunity to view what possibly is true. I myself get foreign news, Germany, the United Kingdom, and incorporate that in my attempt to balance. But when you're looking at, say you're looking at the personal stuff, and that's the reason for the book. Say you want to make your own decisions. You want to become authentic. You want to understand how much of your life has been manipulated, or why you have become this consumption animal. that, has all these things that you can look around at that you don't know why you got them in the first place, and you sure don't need them. But now your consumption has become your avocation. It's become your hobby. It's become what you do on the weekends. It's become what you plan to do. When you stop and you pause and you reflect upon who you really are and what your opportunities as a human being are, that causes a different kind of sort the material out. That, in my view, the way you get to that is to become mindful of every thought you have. And by mindful, I don't mean judgmental. So you have a thought come in, and maybe the thought comes in and, it basically says, well, I like so-and-so for president. Well, ask yourself why. Why is it I like this person? Where did I first learn this? I mean, why do people dislike this person? I wonder, maybe I should look at why this person is disliked and see if I can find the argument. When you're looking at yourself and you have a thought that is self-doubt, a thought that is self-destructive, again, source it. Where did that come from? Why am I having that thought? I mean, when did I first have that? I mean, surely I don't believe that I'm not worthy. I mean, where did that come from? And in that way, you can begin to uncover yourself. But the bottom line, the problem is, that's work. And it doesn't happen overnight. And even people that become aware of it, even those who know that this is what they ought to be doing, don't find time for it. Instead, they're too habituated to that squirrel cage and in that run and keeping that momentum.
Hey, Eldon?
Yeah.
We're getting really close on time, and I have one question, and then I want to talk about your book. But one question that I thought maybe you could answer. I heard this story the other day, which just shocked me. And I'm kind of talking about this whole new series of events we've been seeing. But it was about a high school girl who got into some run-in with the security guards at her school, went to school with gasoline, doused them with gasoline, and tried to light them on fire. What the heck do you think is going on with our young people doing things that are beyond bizarre and destructive to each other?
Their value system has systematically been desensitized. We put children in front of simulators that are nothing more than killing machines at very early ages today. And by that I mean it could be in an arcade, it could be a computer, a first-person shooter game. It can be one of these multi-person games. The bottom line is, systematically, we have desensitized the nature of humanness in our society. What used to be considered violent or too sexual for media is no longer the case. We see as much gore as you could possibly imagine, and the news does the same to us. We see dead bodies spewed about. And what do? They say, now look, we're about to show you something that may be upsetting, so you may want to turn away from it. The psychology of that says, watch. It's a sign, wet paint, do not touch. Everybody touches. So we all watch. We all see this gore, this violence. You get on the internet, you can see the beheadings of some of the journalists on behalf of the terrorists in the world, and you see it live. I mean, here it is, the kind of gore, and then we allow you to participate in it. We create special games so that you can race through these virtual environments, killing everybody.
But what's the end
There
game?
are children.
Why make society this way? And we have about 3 minutes to cover this, and then we need to move on. But why do this to society? What's the end game?
Divide and conquer, Rita. Remember, we go back to the original plan that I said was possibly an agenda. I mean, it was their agenda, and maybe, they have been successful. I'll leave that to the reader to decide. I'll just give you the facts. But if you look at that agenda, it was break down society. Now, why? Because if you don't have a cohesive society depending upon each other and defending each other, then you have a group of solos that are easy to manage. Do you understand what I'm saying? Look, if the cattle all said, no, we're not going that way, and turned on you, what would happen? If we all as people said, hold it, you can't carry out experiments like you did in San Francisco, where you spray the fog with chemicals, with bacteria, and kill someone, kill an innocent citizen. You cannot do that. We will not allow you, even though the court said you had the legal right to do it and you couldn't be sued over it. We're not going to allow you to do that. If we all were in that place, government would be different, wouldn't it? If we all said, I'm tired of this, money is coming out of politics, and we all behaved as a cohesive unit, money would come out of politics, wouldn't it? Mm-hmm. Well, there's your answer.
All right. You have a big promotion with the release of this book coming up, and I want to make one comment to my listeners before I give you the mic back. So people that listen to the show, we've had obviously Eldon on several times before, but we've also had our good friend Jim Marsh, who gets into all this conspiracy theory stuff. Well, I don't know that Eldon would consider himself a conspiracy theorist, but if you like that genre, you will love this book because it just puts it right out there in black and white. I'm not saying anymore, Eldon. What do you have going on? Because this book is just releasing, right?
Right. We're having the launch party, if you will, right now. And your listening audience can go to my website, eldontaylor.com. That's ELDONTAYLOR.com. Thanks for giving me that opportunity, Rita. And there's a banner, and it's a picture of the book, Gotcha, big banner. Click on that banner, and you'll learn about all the free gifts and drawings and prizes that you can learn. And Dr. Rita Louise has been one of those people that has made available special gifts, so you definitely want to go there. And you get the book, you get it at Amazon or Barnes & Noble or wherever you normally buy a book. You just take your purchase receipt and put the number back in at the website. And there you can collect, I think there's about 100 gifts that are there now, including some of my favorites, a couple of good ebooks that are selling on Kindle right now for $10 and so. Stephen Halpern has got a wonderful new album that's available as a download there. And we're giving away a $500 custom library of Intertalk programs. You can customize it however you want. So a lot of good things. But, go to eldontaylor.com.
And there's also a direct link on the Just Energy Radio webpage that people can click on also.
Oh, cool. Go there first.
All right, go there first. Eldon, always a pleasure. This book, I wish you the best of luck, and I hope it wakens people up to what's going on around us.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rita. Appreciate very much the opportunity to join you again today.
You too, and I will talk to you again soon, I'm sure.
Okay.
All right.
Look forward to it.
All right, you be blessed. And then next week, we have Richard Shaw talking about the secrets of the Torah codes. And in the second hour, Maria Wheatley talking about the elongated skulls of Stonehenge. Until next time, I'm Dr. Rita Louise. This is Just Energy Radio. Be blessed.
Join host Dr. Rita Louise each week at this time for Just Energy Radio. Point your browser